And actually, to the name of Mound Visit, I was going to share with you guys kind of my debut.
Oh yeah,
the best Mound visit, the best Mound visit I've ever had, man.
That's what we're talking about. Well, you know what it is. It's that day, hump day, midweek here, and we have a special guest, incredible person. I am so honored and excited for this man to come on out of the clouds with us today and join us. What a story. Brandon Puffer, if you don't know who he is, you're going to know. And the book from that I wrote, that I read on the plane, the bullpen to the state pen. What an incredible story of baseball, prison, redemption, man. Brandon, thanks for coming on the show and talking with us and being with us today, man. It's awesome to have you, bro.
Yeah, girl, I appreciate it, man. I'm looking forward to it, and I thank you guys for the opportunity.
We really thank you for coming on and sharing this story. It's really, it's, not to be cliche, but it's inspiring. It's a really inspiring story, and I think it's one that a lot of people need to hear. But let's start off and just talk a little bit about, younger days. Talk about your baseball career a little bit. Talk to us about those dreams that you had as a younger kid coming up and, wanting to be a big league pitcher. Walk us through that whole thing.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I grew up in Southern California, so
lucky bum.
Some nice weather. But yeah, baseball year round, and down in Orange County, in Mission Viejo, and Jason was just telling me a story about his Angels days, so I'm sure he's familiar. But yeah, man, it was North Mission Viejo Little League was our life, man. My dad coached, and my mom volunteered, and we spent so much of our time just at the fields, making great memories, and a small portion of those memories are on the field, but most of it's just hanging out with your buddies in between games and, playing over the line or in the sewer or whatever it was, man. We were all over the place. And, I just, at that point, I fell in love with the game and had a little bit of a gift for it seemed. And so I just made a kind of a pact with myself that I was going to do everything in my power and to fulfill a dream of becoming a Major League Baseball player. And so, early on, things were going okay. And then kind of moving through high school is when some scouts started coming around a little bit and just kind of stoked that fire a little bit of like, hey, maybe this could be a reality, right? And so got drafted out of high school. Not very high pick or anything, but I was kind of one of those guys that said, hey, if I get an opportunity, I'm jumping in and going for it. And so, yeah, man, right after high school, the day after I graduated in California, I headed off to Florida for rookie ball and got started on that dream. I didn't know anything about it. I wasn't, mature, certainly not emotionally or mentally, let alone physically for it. But yeah, just got thrown into that lifestyle, and that's where so many more memories, came to fruition with meeting new teammates and that whole run of bus rides and minor league towns. And it would take me quite a while to actually achieve the dream of becoming a big leaguer. But man, I cherish every one of those moments all the way through the minor leagues and, even just coming up, as you said, childhood dreams of the Little League fields and all those great things, those great memories. And again, I think, Grill, you could probably attest, like some of that's on the field, but most of it's just teammates and families and friends and just lifetime relationships that were built.
Yeah, no doubt, man. Who was the guy? I mean, you're a sidewinder, right? Funky little delivery out of the pen. Who was the guy you modeled your career after? Because there's not too many guys throwing from down under, man. That's a funky thing that you have to master. So kudos and hats off to that.
Yeah.
Tough thing.
Well, thanks, man. And so that didn't happen until 5 years into pro ball. That was kind of a necessity. Like, hey, you're okay, but you're not going to make it as an average right-hander over the top with a loopy curveball, right? So I was actually a minor league pitching coach named Andre Rabone. Just an awesome guy, man. He was a kind of a journeyman, pitched in Mexico, had all kind of arm angles. And to be honest with you, I was in Charleston, West Virginia. I've been released 3 times already. 5 years in, still in A-ball. Got about a 5 ERA, and my arm was killing me, man. I had bicep tendonitis bad over the top, and I was just flipping balls in BP, sidearm, just flipping them into the bucket. And he came rolling out and just kind of said, "Hey, Puff, you ever think about throwing like that?" And I said, "No, man, my arm just hurts, honestly." And he said, he confided in me the week before one of my teammates had been released, and he said, "Man, your name came up, like you were on the block." So here we are, 25, working on your fourth release. It's like you're open to try about anything. So Andre had the foresight to go, "Hey, you might be able to do this," and we threw a little bullpen on the side and just kind of went for it from there. And it honestly, extended my career by 10 years. And no way I made the big leagues conventionally over the top. So it was just kind of a nice, a nice switch, a change, a little more deception, things of that nature. But it really was a necessity for me. So growing up, I loved, I loved Oral Hershiser. I was a Dodger fan. Me and my dad were big Dodger guys. Fernando, not someone I'm going to model myself after, but absolutely loved watching him. And then, obviously once I did become a sidearmer, Eckersley was the guy. So I kind of went back and watched stuff on him and things of that nature. But yeah, man, for me, it was just like, hey, you either evolve or your days are numbered.
Well, we talked about one of the Kevin Bacon 6 degrees of separation prior to you coming on the show. Last week we had Scott Cassidy, a former teammate, and both you and mine was just from growing up childhood. And the connection, it's just amazing how connecting the dots. And Scott and I, you watched the show a little bit, Puff, just about that adjustment. We talked about even Roy Halladay. I mean, just what you have to do, and that's the grind people don't realize. If you get drafted, it's all exciting. Then you go back to, hey, man, your glory days. You probably had more guys and people in the stands at your high school games than you do in some of the minor leagues coming up. But the adjustments that you have to make in order to be the best, like I said, to be that Eckersley, to be that Fernando Venezuela, these are the things you sit there and go, I'll do anything to get there. And you obviously did because you finally got there, making your debut for the Houston Astros in 2002. Who'd you roll with in those teams? I know Craig Biggio, former Seton Hall Pirate, was there. And, some good
Was
guys.
Bagwell there in those days, too? Was he...
Yeah, it was all the killer bees, man. Bagwell, Biggio, Berkman, Roy Oswalt, Brad Lidge, Billy Wagner, just all those guys, man. And it was fun. It was awesome. And actually, to the name of Mound Visit, I was going to share with you guys kind of my debut.
Oh yeah,
the best Mound visit I've ever had, man.
That's what we're talking about.
Yeah, man. I came out in Cincinnati. I got called up. Houston met the team in Cincinnati, and I think I had a day or two where I just got to soak it in, and then eventually it's like you got to work, right? That bullpen phone's going to ring, and they're going to call your name. So here you go. And it was the ninth inning. We were up 7-2. Rolled in there. I'm sure you remember the time, Grill, where you just float into the bullpen on that debut, and warm up pitches. Didn't feel my legs. I was just like, oh my goodness, get it together, Puff. And faced the first guy, Todd Walker, first guy, I'd ever faced, struck him out. I'm like, oh, this is easy, man. I got this, right? And then, got the next guy out. I don't remember who it was. And then all of a sudden I hit a dude in the back. Jason LaRue actually is still a buddy of mine. Another guy hits a double. So we're like first and third, 2 outs, 7-2 in a big league ball game. It's like, yeah, we're going to give this guy an opportunity, but we're not about to drop a game for it, right? And next thing I know, man, I hear a cannon going off in the bullpen, and it's Wagner getting hot quick. Our closer, Billy Wagner. Boom, boom, boom. And Jimmy Williams is our veteran manager, and in spring training he had a meeting, and it was really important to him that we knew. He said, if I come out to the mound, I'm not coming out to talk. I'm coming out to pull you. Because he wanted to avoid any of those confrontations, right? And the ball flip or whatever. And so I remember that. He's like, if I send the pitching coach, we're talking. If I come out, just give me the ball. No words. So I'm a rookie, man. I filed that away. And here we are, 2 outs, my debut, first and third, and here comes Jimmy, right? And I'm like, oh, man, dang it, dude. And he walks out, and I go to hand him the ball. I remember the speech, and he goes, wait a minute, Puff, wait a minute. I'm like, okay. Ausmus is out there. The infield came in, and he goes, it's your major league debut, right? And I go, yeah. He goes, you got any family in town? You got to make some calls after this? What do you got? And I go, yeah, a couple people flew in. I'll call the rest after, whatever. But what are you going to do for dinner? You going to take them out, spend some of that big league meal money? You going to eat in the clubhouse? What are you going to do? I said, man, I'll probably have a snack and then take my family to dinner. Okay. He goes, well, I bet they're hungry. And he goes, I'm hungry too. Why don't you get this last out so we can go take your family to dinner? Dude, I was like, what a veteran move out of Jimmy.
That's awesome.
I just relaxed, got the third out, shook hands with the guys. I was like, dude, I get chills thinking about it. I was like, what an awesome moment for a debut and a veteran manager know that it was going too fast for me, man.
Mm-hmm.
That's so cool.
That was the best mound visit I ever had.
Until now. Like a scene out of Bull Durham, right? You know, it's a scene of just talking about everything except the game. Sometimes it's like, wow, man, just forget it. You're talented enough to be there. That's why they got you there, and he let you finish. That's awesome. That's awesome, man.
That's so cool.
Man. Yeah.
I think one of the coolest things too, when you look at your career and hearing you talk about how you transitioned to being a sidearm pitcher, I think it's something that I've been curious to ask you because it's not an easy transition at all. So what do you think made it possible for you to not only have success as a sidearm pitcher, but have success enough to where, you know, that was what helped you make it to the major leagues?
Yeah, good question, Casey, man. I think it's just, the willingness to go all in, right? So the hard part is, Grill just said it, like when you get to that point, there's something in you that has you've reached that point for a reason, right? And so you want to hang on to that and go, hey, I'm pretty good. That's why I'm here. And it kind of can actually get in the way of or hinder you evolving a little bit, right? Because you're like, well, this is what got me here. I'm just going to keep doing that, whatever it is. And so fortunately for me, like I explained to you guys, the writing was kind of on the wall where I needed to make a change. And so I went all in. I worked really hard at it with, going out and throwing flat grounds, just, kind of getting in the mirror and looking at the mechanics of it. But more than anything, and I've actually had the opportunity to help a few high school kids do it. I mean, I don't recommend it for everybody, but there's, some high school seniors, their coach says, hey, Puff, we're probably not going to be able to use them. Hey, what do you think? And we drop it down. And I always tell them, like, this has to be 100% buy-in from you. Because we can all see it or tell you whatever, but if you're not feeling comfortable with it or it's not something you want to do, it's just not going to work because it's pretty drastic. I say it's pretty drastic, but to be honest with you, it's really just your posture. You go from a normal set to bending over a little bit and your arm angle drops with you. So it's not as hard. And I remember like even some really good pitching coaches like Mike Maddox, one of the best in the game, man. I had him in Round Rock a couple years after I dropped down. And he's like, Puff, I don't know anything about sidearm. You're on your own kind of thing. Kind of half joking and jest, but like he meant it. And I'm like, dude, it's not that different. Like it's just, you're just bending over and everything else is the same. So you kind of have to really take it upon yourself to go, hey, again, model some great guys who had done it and go back and look at what they're doing.
Confidence,
and then I really
confidence.
That's what it is, man. Confidence and buying in 100% to the process of it. If you're half in, half out, which in the beginning, the Reds dropped me down. I went out. I was having some success that way. The very first outing I had, I literally said to him, the next day, well, if you guys call me in the bullpen, what do I do? He's like, you drop down. I'm like, that's what you are now. I said, okay. And I actually had a decent curveball over the top, decent. And so I remember getting 0-2 on a guy, and there was some brass in the stands. I tried to get cute and throw an 0-2 over the topper. Like, hey, I'm going to get cute here. And they called me in and said, hey, we dropped you down for a reason. And if we see you throw over the top one more time, you're out. And I was like, okay. So just buy in, really buying into it.
You just had to move the bone chips around a little bit, right? Because I said you got to be a little bit more sore, dropping down from where you used to be, using muscles and arm angles. Things had to change for a minute to be like, oh, God, hook me up to that stim unit, give me the bucket of ice, I'm in, Man,
ironically, Grill, though, you would think, but dude, my arm bounced back so good from down there. Like, I so good. And not only that, like when you weren't feeling great, you could just go kind of free and easy and rely on movement instead of feeling like you really had to get in the slot and you had to be right on, So for me, and I can't speak for everyone else, my arm felt better than ever. I mean, after a few years, I started feeling it in some different places. And yeah, to your point, a little bit of soreness from it being new. But, brother, I had the hook and the elbow for sure. The spurs were there. But it's like, man, I'll throw every day like this, man. And whereas if I had a bicep issue over the top, couldn't wash my hair, I was down for a couple days. Sidearm was like, man, let's go. We go every day.
It's a more natural position for your arm. I mean, you think about softball players being able to throw like 170, 180 pitches a game. It's more similar to that than it is like a baseball motion over the top because your arm is it's a more free and natural position for the joints and everything. So I only know this because that same thing happened to me in college. My coaches wanted me to drop down and throw sidearm, so I did a lot of research on that. And
okay, see, there you go.
Yeah,
there you
so
go, man.
Yeah, but anyways,
Casey, the thunder from down under.
That's right. Nice, I didn't.
Dude.
Unfortunately, I didn't have any major league success down under, but it's still cool to talk to guys about and learn about.
He's rubbing shoulders on the show, man. This is part of his mound visit.
That's right.
He's dropping in and asking the questions. Casey's a little bit younger than us, and he's made me feel old.
I don't know if
on
you
this
did
show, talking about how young he is, and he collected my baseball card and stuff. I said, "Geez, man, you make me feel old. You can't do that on the mound visit. It's all about elevation and confidence here, buddy."
He likes to poke at the old dudes, huh?
That's right.
Love it.
But bro, let's get into your book. I got to read it. We never took some plane trips together, and those can be fun when you travel with the team, especially after some wins.
Yeah.
And I got to buy your book, and I don't remember what I was looking for on Amazon, and I came across your book, and just the title alone made me buy it, and I read it on the plane, and it was just like, wow, I got deep into it, one, because of, obviously, you're a fraternity brother in the MLB and never got to play with you, played against you at some point. I know that. I could probably look up some games and say, hey, I faced you from the other side or watched you do your thing. But then just, like I said, how you wound up going to prison, man, and just your faith, which is even, I can imagine that is the biggest part, like even rocking that hat right there. I know you're a big faithful guy coming off of Easter and just all the way through here, what we're doing. The glory of that, man. Just talk about that journey from baseball to prison to your redemption. I mean, everything happens to people. I'm here to elevate you, validate. I know you obviously we're in a fight of things, the bad choice. I'm trying to tell you it's the best. You're probably one of the best people to inspire. You hear a lot of things from parents of what to do, not to do. We're worried about this and that. And just some circumstances led you down a path that you probably didn't even imagine it would happen to you.
Man, absolutely, Grill. I had no thought or vision or anything in the back of my mind like, hey, this could be my story. You hear these stories and you go, yeah. Even when we played ball, they'd bring guys in and tell stories, horror stories of bad choices or decisions or things that kind of help you and guide you. Because the baseball off the field, we talked about a little bit with the downtime and all that. If you have, some demons you're fighting, some addictions, which I did, it can be pretty hard, man, with the downtime and all the things that are kind of at your disposal and all that. And so I struggled with that, man, all through my career. I grew up with faith, talking about my hat. My mom's a pastor at Saddleback Church. That's why I rock this for her. And she was a rock, man, like an angel, dude, like unbelievable faith, woman of faith, praying mama. But my dad was a little different when I was growing up in terms of, like, he was a man's man. Like, he was a big dude and a tough guy, and, and I love that about him. And I wanted to be like him, and I even resented my mom's faith a little bit because I didn't understand it. I was like, I don't get that. But then my dad, he got sober when I was in high school and Celebrate Recovery at Saddleback Church, and I saw his life change. And that's where I was like, wait a minute, there's something to this, man. And I just watched my pops, like, totally change everything about him, and it didn't seem like he just flipped a switch. Like, something happened inside of him. And so I filed that away, and I still went and was a knucklehead. And he'd tell me things like, hey, son, like, this alcohol stuff and this chasing, all this other stuff, it's like, it only ends two ways, prison or death. And, I'm like, I know, Dad, but you got to have so much fun until your 30s, and I'm having fun out here. And rather than learning from his mistakes, I decided, being a knucklehead, that I was going to make my own. And that's why I wrote the book, Jason. I'll get more into it, too. But it was just because, like, hey, a cry for, like, you don't have to go down this path. Like, I'm telling you, I never thought this would happen to me. Or, those folks who already made bad choices, and there's guilt and shame, and they don't feel like there's life after, whatever decision they made was. Because I know that feeling, too, of, like, sitting in a prison cell going, where do I go from here? Like, is anyone ever going to give me opportunities after this? Are people going to want to be around me? Like, I let everybody down. The shame that comes with these decisions. And so, yeah, to your point, man, I was playing ball for a long time and kind of went back to the minor leagues, did a little Bull Durham role with the Texas Rangers. I was Crash Davis in Double-A in the early 30s, and, dudes like Derek Holland and Chris Davis and Elvis Andrews.
I played with them, and they were ready to go. They were always ready to go, having a good time. And again, it's no fault of big leaguers. I think everybody knows that. Hey, you get to play a man's game and you're a kid, and coming out of college or high school, and you're throwing money and women and access to any bar or restaurant you can go to and want to go to, and your teammates are like, yeah, we want to have some fun, and to the point, people don't realize like the downtime in a ball player's day or any athlete's day is in the evening hours. So my grandma used to say nothing good happens after midnight, and she was kind of right because you have to make some tougher decisions, to be subject to the peer pressures of the clubhouse and the guys that want to have fun and letting loose from whether it's a good game or a bad game. It's always can be a good time. You know what I mean? Because you're trying to forget the pains of, hey, look, I just gave up the game-winning home run. I let my team down. I let my city down. And am I going to have a job? So there's a pressure there that people don't know. And whether you turn to the bottle or drugs or just poor decisions, addictions, that's something that a lot of guys battle with, not just yourself. So I just want to tell people out there, was I tempted to? All the time. I always had to just have that little my dad on my shoulder or that angel on the shoulder say, hey, man, do the right thing. That's what my parents said. Just do the right thing because you make a choice, you got to be prepared to make the consequence. And, brother, just like I said, you being vulnerable to be here, much respect to teach and exemplify what never quitting is. And, people can't – if they can't see you're a good guy, they're missing the boat. And like I said, the message you got is incredible, bro.
Thank you, brother. Yeah, you're right. Those guys were ready to go. And I'd kind of been there, done that, and knew that I didn't handle my alcohol well. I don't have an off switch. I'm kind of Frank the Tank, right? And so I was really trying hard to keep it together. And they were on me, man, Grill. They were like, I was the old dude. I was the leader. And they're like, come on, Puff. Come on, let's go. And all year I was just like, nah, guys, I can't do it, man. It's not for me, But I hadn't totally let it go, but I just didn't want them to know that I was struggling, right? I wanted them to think I had it all together because I was their mentor or whatever. And so sure enough, man, like to your point, September 13th of '08, that season, towards the end, we were in championship series. We were all feeling pretty good, and it was a Friday, and I just decided, you know what, man? I'm going to compromise one night. I'm going to go hang with these guys, give them what they want, and Frank the Tank's coming out, right? And so, but you just said it, man. Like, I knew that little voice when I was driving to the yard was like, don't do it, man. Not a good choice. Don't do it. You know where this leads for you. And I'm like, it'll be one night. One night. That's it. September 13th, September 14th, I woke up in that orange jumpsuit in jail, man. I blacked out, made a terrible decision, and that led me to a 5-year sentence in prison in Texas. And I did 3.5 years on that sentence. Man, I'll tell you, I wouldn't change anything about it other than the hurt I caused other people. My family, the other families involved. But in terms of changing my life and humility and things I needed that I didn't have in my life, that's what it took for me. And God had to get my attention and get a hold of me. And I always tell people, I'm like, with Jonah, he needed 3 days in the belly of the fish, right? And I'm like, dude, I must be a bigger knucklehead than Jonah because I needed 3.5 years in the belly of that fish in that prison cell. So, man, so many different things came of that. And to your point of redemption, what God has done since then and just starting over and redeeming family to me and baseball's back in my life and all these different things. And, I always encourage people, I'm like, you can move forward from here, but it takes some work. People want to see you own your stuff, man, own your mistakes, right? And have humility and turn from your behavior. It's not like, I made a mistake, I'm going to go act the same, and everybody's going to be like, yeah, cool. Remember the steroid scandal, man? The dudes that just owned it, and we're like, yeah, I made a mistake. I tried to get an edge. It wasn't right, and I'm sorry. Forgiven, right? We're good. Okay, let's move forward. The guys who hang on to it.
Nobody likes a liar.
Not me, man. Not me. I didn't do it. Those guys are still having consequences from that. It's like, just own your stuff. Yeah. You made a mistake. Own it. Learn from it and move forward, Well,
like I said, you talk about the good book. There's a lot of crazy characters in the Bible and a good book, man, and it's all about the same thing. We all fall short, man. So you no less than me or Case here, or anybody listening to this podcast. And like I said, these just teaching kids. Like I said, we all going to have our choices in our life, and when you break free from home, high school, go to college, there's temptation there, man. Yeah. There's temptation on the mound. Do you put that pine tar on the ball, you know, get that edge. We're always trying to elevate ourselves, and for many reasons here on this crazy thing called life, man. But like I said, if you have not read the book, you guys got to grab a copy. It's pretty amazing that you journaled it. I did the same thing in my book. It was just a journal. It was a love letter to my kid, some of the trials and tribulations. I had to scrape out, made it a PG-13 book, not a tell-all book. Trying to just keep some things personal, right, of your own thoughts and of your own mind. You don't need to share everything, but I said the most vulnerable thing you can be as a player, right, Puff, is getting undressed in a room full of men and women. There's some reporters, right, and you don't even know. Like, welcome to the team. What do you got to do? You got to get naked in front of people you don't know. So there's vulnerability in any situation. As a professional athlete, people don't even realize, like, wow, you had to do that every day, right?
Yeah.
So
man. No, it's true, man. Yeah, that's a weird deal, and I'll be honest with you. You know, when you're in prison, there's a lot of there's no privacy. So
I was going to ask,
maybe that prepared me a little bit. Yeah, no, it's every time you go to the rec yard, they strip you completely naked, bend over and cough, check you for everything. When you come back in, same thing, because you might have had something you found out there, right? It's crazy, man. Like I said, I didn't know this world existed. I have a heart for it now. Like, as we speak right here, man, we're hanging out. We got the luxuries of life again, and there's dudes in there right now that, like, no contact with their family. Mm-hmm. They're being treated like dogs by the guards. They're, you know, getting stripped down out of nowhere, getting their stuff taken away, getting yelled at. And look, don't get me wrong, like, not saying I was a victim. I did what I did. They did too. But they're good men, man. I met some good, talented, smart men that made mistakes. And 99% of the time, it's because they were under the influence of drugs or alcohol, man. And then you get them sober while they're in there. Well, some of them still find a way. But when they're sober and they're reflecting on life, it's like, man, these are good men. These are family men that miss their kids and just like us. So, you know, I joke that, you know, the pro ball thing got me ready, but, you know, routine and some different lessons I learned through the career definitely helped me get through that time.
It's interesting because I think sometimes there's two ways you can go, or at least, you know, from what I've heard, you know, there's two ways you can go with something like that. If you go, you know, to prison, sometimes coming out of it, you might fall back into some of the same patterns. But what was it about your time, whether it was maybe reflecting that you did in there, you know, taking a look at yourself and, you know, talking with yourself in the mirror, what was it about your time in prison that allowed you to come out of it stronger and better and now, you know, obviously as successful as you are right now?
Yeah, man, Casey, it was really, first off, just the surrender to God, complete surrender. Like, I had faith in my life. I knew what that was. I knew what that looked like. But until God's literally all you have, you don't realize that he's all you need, right? And so I didn't go, okay, just get me through this sentence and then I'm going to serve you and then I'm going to change my life. From the day, I mean, literally, I had a jury trial. They gave me 5 years. They handcuffed me. I turned around to say, can I go say bye to my dad? They said, nope. And they pulled me off to a cell, stripped me of all my stuff, set me in this cell, and closed the bars. And right when I heard the bars clank, first I started doing the math on how old my kids would be in 5 years, right? That was pretty sobering. Ooh. And then I just surrendered everything to God, man. I just said, okay, here's where my choices got me. I will serve you right now. Not after, not get me out of this. Because up to that point, it was like, just don't let me go to jail. Like, just, I don't want to go to jail, right? It was, I'm starting now. So I prepared myself in there. I did everything I could. I realized what true peace and joy are in Christ. And you can't take it away from me. Like, being happy, you got a good outing, closed a game, whatever. That's happiness. That's great. Baseball, you're doing good. But as soon as it's taken away, then where's my happiness, right? So now I found peace and joy in a place where there's not a whole lot of it. And it's like, I was happy. I was positive, happy for those 3.5 years. Guys were like, what's wrong with you, man? Like, how can you be like this in here? I was a janitor at times. I was mopping the floors in prison. I was, I ate spaghetti off the floor during race riots. I'm just like, hey, man, not that that's good stuff, but it's like, whatever my circumstance around me, you can't take this peace and joy that I found in Christ. So that kind of prepared me. And I went to cognitive intervention classes. I read my Bible like no other. I was in constant prayer. All these things to try to, better myself. And then that kind of carried over to coming out. And even when I got out, I started completely over. I'd lost every single thing I made in baseball, trying to stay out of prison or taking care of my responsibilities in prison that were still on the outside. And so literally, I had an onion sack. We just moved. I used to have it with me, of a Bible and some hygiene. And that was it, man. And I was just like happy. Like, let's go. Where are we going from here? I took a real humbling job at a minor league ballpark where I live. I was a maintenance guy, painting and staining. And guys who worked there, I had a supervisor. He was a big baseball fan. And he was from Boston. He was a Red Sox fan. And he just loved asking me baseball questions. And he would literally come up to me, dude, and be like, we're going to do the bathrooms today, but you're not doing it. And I'm like, yeah, I'm doing it. And he's like, no, you pitched out there. You're a double A All-Star. I was like, dude, no. Like, this is the humility I needed, and I'm going to do this. And so just taking those little steps of humility and taking what God gave me, he kept elevating. Like, okay, now you're ready for this, and now you're ready for this. And, here's a few lessons. And wait, people will still trust me to coach their kids. This is awesome. And here's a team. And then now I have this nonprofit youth and high school program that's just blowing up, mostly because of just great men around me that are great coaches. But I just feel like all that is God just going, hey, no matter what you've done, no matter where you've been, again, if you own it and you repent and turn the other way and start making better choices, I still got a plan for you, man. I'm going to get you right back on this path. And so it's just been really cool to watch him work that out.
Cool that you got to stay in baseball too. I mean, it's, you played it your whole life. And I wonder too, were there lessons that you learned because baseball, we talk about it all the time. Baseball is a game of failure. And if you're able to, mentally overcome the fact that, whether it as a hitter, you're failing 7 out of 10 times. And if you do that, you're still one of the best. It is a game of failure. Were there lessons that you learned, whether it was in that failure or during your time in the game, that maybe helped you with some of those choices that you made later on to turn that page?
Yeah, I think definitely there was some carryover there. Things like your mindset and only controlling what you can control. And, obviously there's a lot of ups and downs during that time. There's a lot of I tell people all the time, I'm like, yeah, I saw some horrible things and had to endure some stuff, but like not being able to just reach out to your family, like not just shooting them a text or a phone call when you're missing them or your loved ones. That's the hardest part, man. That's terrible. And so, being that I had to travel and be away from family, like Grill, like you had to, and even if I had a bad game mentally, it's like you had to just kind of keep your mind in the right place. And so I felt like that mindset that, I tried to take into my career did help me get through some stuff. Like, hey, it's going to be really high and low in here, but let's just keep our mind in the same spot and keep a routine. Routine was huge because you talk about downtime, man. You've got to be extremely intentional if you want to reform while you're in prison. It's not made for that. Well, it's made for, let's lock them up, let's segregate them. Everyone's going to join a race gang and whatever. It's like you've got to be intentional to stay away from all those prison politics. And that's what every day I had a routine, and I was like, this is what I'm going to do. This is how I'm going to do my time. And I'm not judging anybody else on how they do theirs, but I'm not coming off my routine. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, it takes discipline, fortitude. I'm sure being a ball player, that had a lot to do with it. And I can imagine the respect you might have gotten from these guys who were like, wait, you're a ball player. And, they kind of looked up to you in a sense and brought some of the outside world to talk some sports and relatable things. But, talk just even about there's had to have been some breakdown moments, because I know I had them just in the big leagues, in the good moments and the bad, right? You're looking at the volatility of what you've had at the top of the hill, right? And the bottom of the top of the mountain, bottom of the valley, and you're rising back up. And like I said, the volatility is what molds and shapes you. I remember a couple of times you said there's no crying in baseball. I remember being in a corner of a hotel room somewhere going like, God, what am I doing wrong? I got to get here. And I can only imagine what it's like being in that prison cell, just like where time, it just feels like it felt forever. I'm sure at some moments where you're just like, please God, what can I do here? And your mind has to go. So that strength, man, during those times, but you experienced it.
Yeah, it is, man. But it's just surrender. It is. It's just like, you get to the end of yourself. And again, you're just like, every day I woke up and I was like, God, just, get me through this day. Show me if there's someone I can encourage while I'm in here. Like, just show me how you can use me here. And he always did show up in ways like that. And then at the end of every night, and this was in my journal, it was like, thank you for getting me through one more day. It was kind of like the sobriety thing, like just this day, just get me through this day. and some were better than others, certainly. And you talk about, the respect of being a ball player. When guys would find, I noticed quickly that they would bet on sports a lot in there. And, like, I remember, like, guys would say, I remember you. And I was waiting for somebody to be like, dude, you lost me all kinds of money blowing a lead against whoever. And I was like, man, I hope they don't remember any of that. But another thing, dude, is, like, I had to get creative about workouts, man. Like, I'd get creative, and then guys would pick up on it. And they'd be like, hey, can I work out with you? And all of a sudden, I'd have 10 or 12 guys that I was training, I guess. And one particular time, I was sitting in the back of a dorm training like 12 guys, and it's a real segregated thing. It's really crazy, and I didn't care. I would, if it was Hispanic, black, white, I'd work out with whoever. I just didn't care. And this particular time just happened to be, about 10 white guys, and the guard came in, stood over top of me, and said, Puffer, the lieutenant wants to see you. And that doesn't happen. I'm like, huh? She's like, yeah. And I mean, I was a model. Like, I'm talking about good boy. Like, I just want to get home to my kids, man. I'm reading my word. I'm whatever. And I went in there, and the lieutenant had me on the computer, and she's like, I have it on good authority that you're the shot caller for the Aryan Brotherhood. And I'm like, what? And they're like, yeah, oh yeah. And it's like, no, you got the wrong guy. Like, because I was training with these guys, and they were following me. And again, any given week, it would be different races, but this particular time, this is what it was. And man, I was like, she's like, well, I just want you to know I know. I'm like, okay. And I went back to the dorm, and they're like, what is this about? And I told them, and they just laughed so hard because it was like, you? Like you, the Bible reading, like, whatever. And so after that, these guys, they made it worse on me, because then we go out to the rec yard, and I would go to hit my set, and they would all stand around me like they were guarding me. And I'm like, guys, stop. Like, they're playing into this thing, like, here's our shot caller. And I was like, dude, please. So, we had fun with the guys, and you were able to find the right guys that had sense of humors, and you could still have you got to keep it light. It's like baseball or anything. You got to be able to have some laughs and keep it light, and, just make the best of your circumstance. And so there was definitely times like that as well. But yeah, man, it was a hard deal, man, and it was a struggle, and there's nothing but like faith and having good family and friends supporting me that got me through it.
That's great. I mean, it's such a great story, and I'm sure, Grilli feels the same way. We could talk for hours about, just the stories that, that we've read and that you've talked about and your journey. But I think, one thing to end off on, and, we have a lot of younger viewers who like to listen to this show as well. And, I think this week in particular is special because, we're not just learning about what to do on the baseball field to help improvement, but this is really, off the field. So if you had to give one piece of advice to a young kid who, not necessarily is getting into trouble, but just a young kid who, is growing up and is about to start their life's journey, what's one piece of advice that you would, it's a loaded question, but what's one piece of advice you would give to them?
Man, it is loaded, but I think what I would say is if you're feeling like you're struggling, right, and you're having these thoughts, because it all just starts with a thought. It's always going to start with a thought, right? Don't ignore that, right? And don't feel like you're alone and you can't tell anybody, right? That was my thing. I didn't want these guys to know that I was messed up and I was struggling off the field. So I kept it to myself, which allowed that thought to continue to ruminate, and then it eventually turned into an action, right? And so just at the thought, of, hey, I'm thinking about hurting myself, or hey, I'm thinking about starting on this, starting some drugs or alcohol or whatever, and it's not a good decision. That's the other thing. Listen to that still small voice of, Grill said he had his dad on his shoulder. Whatever it is inside of you, there's always going to be that like, hey, you probably shouldn't do this, but you've got a choice. And so if you come across that and you're feeling like I'm about to make this choice or this decision, or I'm thinking this way, tell somebody. That's the biggest thing. Like, I feel like that, the devil's biggest, tactic is keeping you silent, making you feel like you're the only one struggling. No, you can't tell anybody. They're going to think you're messed up. For me, it was, don't be selfish. That's a selfish teammate if you go in and tell them you're struggling. This is about your team, not you. Well, in reality, I needed help, man. And I'm sure every one of them would have stepped up and said, man, sorry, you need help? Yes. Raise your hand. This is my message. Raise your hand and go, hey, I'm struggling. And because I promise you, as soon as you do, you're going to take a little bit of that power away from that thought or that activity. It's going to lose its power, and then you're going to find a bunch of other people going, wait, me too. Man, I got you. With strength
trust
in
your
numbers.
gut, man. It's your second brain, right? I always say your gut is your second brain because it kind of, like you said, it starts from a thought, and your gut's like, you get those nerves. It's like, should I do this? Should I not do it? Your gut, guys, is the second brain. And talking about circling back as we close this out, Puff, the feeling from the mound visit of when you couldn't feel your legs, the height of that, the heartbeat. If our listeners had a little heartbeat here, they're like, wow, passing judgment or wondering what the heck we're talking about, being comfortable, being uncomfortable. We're covering the bases on this mound visit right here, talking about everything. We, to our viewers, if you don't know God, I know Puff's a big proponent of it. I know my faith is something that maybe we hinder on and make people feel a little uncomfortable. It's just an outlet that everybody should look into, however you worship and all that. And I always tease people, if we want to not bring God into baseball, what's funny, because as a Catholic boy growing up, there's 108 stitches on a baseball, and there's 108 rosary beads on a rosary. So I don't know if you can say that God isn't involved in baseball, and that's in Bull Durham too, right there.
Yeah. That's awesome, man. I never knew that.
Yeah, there you go.
Well, it's just, Grilli, it's just this too, man. It's like we're all put here for a reason, and it's bigger than us, man. Like, we make it all about us. I know I did, all about my career, all about me. And that's what this bad choice, these consequences really showed me, is like, hey, it's not all about you. You're here for other people. You're here for a different reason, And so I think the sooner we realize that, the sooner we start being effective and walking our calling, when we realize it's really not all about me. And I still fight it every day, man. The pride and the ego, and like, dude, this isn't about you. Like, clean it up. It's not about you.
Clean it up, man. Well, I hope that we can do this again. Let's do a bonfire here in Pittsburgh. I want to get you in front of these kids. I know we talked about that. If they don't watch this podcast, sitting in a quick question and answer, whether we're at church, up here at my farm. We got to do this again, man, and it's amazing. Great smile. This guy's a good dude. Check out his book, From the Bullpen to the State Pen, on Amazon. If they can buy it there, support this guy, what he's doing. It's an incredible story, Puff, and appreciate the positive vibes you throw out there. I'm glad we could elevate you and what you're all about, man. God bless you. Thanks for being on this week's Mound Visit, brother.
Hey, appreciate you guys. Casey, Jason, thank you for having me, man. It was a pleasure.